April 2014. 25-year-old Sayel Angala, member of the Tongan Crip gang, appeared in court for a series of violent crimes. Proceedings went on normally until he attempted to assault a witness. He was shot 4 times. Claus Grabowski. March 6, 1981. On the third day of the trial, at around 10 a.m., Marianne Bachmeyer, the mother of a deceased child, smuggled a Beretta 70 into courtroom 157 of the Lübeck District Court and shot Claus Grabowski, the confessed killer of her daughter, in the back. She aimed that gun at Grabowski and fired 7 rounds. 6 would hit him, and the 35-year-old defendant was instantly killed. And that was where Claus's story ended. But his story began in Germany, where the police had identified him as a repeated criminal. He was subsequently arrested for the murder and was sentenced to a probationary period, and one may have thought that that would have been a close call, deterring him from further actions like that. But I guess bad habits don't die, because later he was eventually arrested again for crimes related to children. And while Grabowski first received light treatment in court, the authorities were determined to ensure he faces the full wrath of the law before Marianne took the law into her own hands. Looking at Marianne's background, you wouldn't blame her for her actions on that day. Born on the 3rd of June, 1950, Marianne grew up in poverty and had a very traumatic childhood, with a violent father and a mother who abandoned her when she was just a teenager. She would become a mother at the age of 16, but give up that child for adoption. At 18, she would get pregnant again, and because of circumstances that surrounded her at the time, she also put that child up for adoption. A few years later, she gave birth to her 3rd child, Anna, and decided she was going to keep her. Marianne did everything to ensure the survival of her and her child, and would work endless nights as a waiter in a local bar just to earn a living, where she shared a neighborhood with Claus Grabowski, the child murderer. On the morning of May 5th, 1980, Marianne and her daughter had a terrible argument. She was upset and wanted to see a friend, so she opted to skip school that day. Shortly after leaving her home, pretending to go to school, Anna was lured into an apartment by Grabowski, a neighbor from her complex, and once she went in, he sexually assaulted her for hours, before strangling her with a pair of his fiance's tights. His fiancé had gotten home and saw what happened, immediately alerting authorities. He was then arrested and taken to trial, but when it began, Grabowski tried to shift the blame to Anna. He said that the girl attempted to seduce him, threatening to expose him if he didn't cooperate, and he depicted himself as the victim in this silly, twisted story. This terrible show of victim blaming enraged Marianne, who already had been through immeasurable suffering, so she decided to take care of this herself. Her face would show no emotion. Even as others tried to stop her, she seemed determined to see Grabowski dead. Marianne was given a 6-year first-degree murder sentence, but was released just after 3 years. Unfortunately, she passed away due to pancreatic cancer in 1996 and was buried next to her beloved daughter, Anna. Sayel Angala. Number 6. In April 2014, Sayel Angala, a well-known member of the Tongan Crip gang, arrived at the federal courthouse in downtown Salt Lake City. Everything was going pretty smoothly until it all took a dramatic turn, as the first trial's witness gave his statement in a bid to assert dominance or to shut the witness up. Angala grabbed a pen from the table and lunged towards the witness testifying about his gang activity. The entire courtroom erupted into chaos as everyone present tried to react as swiftly as they could. One of the marshals, seeing the imminent threat to the safety of the witness, sprung into action quickly, drew his firearm, and fired at Angala right as he went airborne over the witness stand. He sustained heavy injuries, and despite the immediate medical attention, he eventually succumbed to his wounds and died. Now, this incident sparked a nationwide discussion on courtroom security protocol and the appropriate use of force by law enforcement within judicial settings. The event had circulated widely in a short time and was on every news outlet. Angala's courtroom demise is quite a bizarre story. Consider this: a criminal dying in court because he attempted to assault someone while on trial for a 29-count racketeering indictment that targeted 17 gang members. Angala, who was 25 at the time, was named in that indictment that focused on organized crimes. The whole Tongan gang faced new indictments for their alleged criminal acts in 2014. The situation that surrounded his demise in the court was very tragic. First, the courthouse scheduled for that trial was a newly built one that had been just commissioned a week earlier. And also, there was a complete breakdown in communication between the sitting judge and the marshal in charge of Angala's courtroom presence. According to the FBI, this mistake was critical. Individuals appearing in court are normally shackled to prevent them from harming others. If there was any reason for them not to be chained, the court marshals had to be informed. Still, in this case, because the new courthouse lacked key settings such as a table covering that would have marked Angala's unfettered status, was unavailable at that time. Many marshals didn't know that he wasn't restrained, and Angala took advantage of that. As the witness took the stand, he launched his attack on him, and an unnamed court marshal intervened, shooting 4 times in the chest. Number 5. Jonathan Schmidt, March 6, 1995. Jonathan made a guest appearance on the popular Jenny Jones program. The 24-year-old was invited to the Jenny Jones TV show because someone had a huge crush on him and wanted to tell him. A story that started as fun and comedic quickly turned into manslaughter. Well, as how anyone would react, he blushed and was extremely eager to know who the lady was. But his joy was cut short as Amir Scott revealed himself as the secret crush. Now, although his demeanor didn't show any sort of negative feelings, only 3 days after the show, on the morning of March 9th, Amir left a sexually suggestive note on Schmidt's apartment doorstep. And in response, Schmidt purchased a 12-gauge shotgun and met him at his house, fatally shooting Amir, leading to his death. When Schmidt realized what he had done, he called 911 to confess his crime.
I think I just got him in.
Okay, calm down, okay? Okay, why did you do that?
March 9th, 1995, Jonathan was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, but the case became a huge talking point about the ethical limitations and the repercussions of public humiliation. As the trial progressed, the defense claimed that the public humiliation on the show drove Schmidt over the edge mentally. According to them, he wasn't in the right mind when he committed the crime, so he should face a lesser charge. March 1996, his trial took an ugly turn. When out of nowhere, he pulls out a revolver while at his trial. A commotion ensued in the courtroom, and fear gripped the hearts of everyone when he pointed that gun and fired. He was immediately rushed to the hospital for life-saving surgery. This unfortunate event also sparked nationwide concerns about the sufficiency of courtroom security and treatment of the mentally ill. His mental health went under a lot of scrutiny after his suicide attempt. So, to satisfy all parties, the judge appointed a psychiatrist to examine him. It was eventually determined that he suffered from depression and multiple personality disorder. The jury eventually agreed with Schmidt's defense claim, and he was eventually found guilty of second-degree murder and Amir's demise. Facing the court's decision, he received a sentence of 25 to 50 years, a surprising outcome given the possibility of a life sentence. Number 4. Michael Maron.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Michael James Maron, guilty of arson of an occupied structure.
July 11, 2012. Arizona authorities obtained a can labeled cyanide from the car of a businessman after he was found guilty of arson. 28th of June, 2011. 53-year-old Maron was convicted for purposefully burning down his $2.55 million mansion in the Tony Biltmore Estates neighborhood of Phoenix. You see, his life began with all the trappings of a bright future. He began his career on Wall Street with a degree from Brigham Young University and a law degree from Yale, living a lavish life through his high-paying job and multiple investments. This man had several luxurious properties, an art collection that was worth millions of dollars, and appeared to be living the American dream. However, Maron's problem began when he couldn't pay his mortgage for that $2.5 million property. He did everything he possibly could, including attempting to raffle it off at a charity event. But despite his troubles, none of them were successful, and his desperation quickly turned into frustration. That raised many eyebrows, cause why would anyone use diving gear in this situation? Maron had devised an incredibly funny scheme to avoid having to pay his mortgage. He intentionally set his house ablaze, and the plan was to collect the insurance money to get out of that financial trouble. However, his strategy failed. The investigation into the fire indicated that the fire was started in 4 different areas around the house, with phone books used to make it spread more quickly. And the fact that he had complete scuba diving equipment just waiting in his closet makes the whole thing even funnier. It became clear that this was a deliberate act. Maron's financial problems and his preposterous attempt to resolve them left him facing serious charges, including repercussions and attempted insurance fraud. A guilty verdict could put him around 7 to 21 years in prison. In June 2012, that fate was sealed when he was found guilty of all the charges against him, and the decision took a physical toll on him, as he could be seen in the video responding with anguish. His face became pale after consuming something from a sports bottle before he fell. Panic arose in the courtroom as everyone raced to save him, but their attempts were futile. Maron was rushed to the hospital where he eventually passed away. Number 2. Brian Nichols.
An Atlanta jury has convicted confessed courthouse shooter Brian Nichols, who claimed he was legally insane when he killed a judge and 3 other people in a 2005 shooting rampage in a downtown Atlanta courthouse.
March 11, 2005. While being escorted to his trial for raping his ex-girlfriend amidst other charges, Nichols attacked a sheriff's deputy when his handcuffs were removed. March 15, 2005. A date Brian would want to forget. The story of Nichols is quite a fascinating one. Born in abject poverty, he defied all odds by carving out some form of success for himself. Between 1986 and 90, Nichols was a student of Kutztown University. His massive presence and martial arts skill earned him a reputation as someone to be careful around with. He had started mixing in with the wrong crowd and then joined a gang. Berks County records showed that Nichols had been arrested multiple times during his short stay at that university in 1990. He was charged with terroristic threats, assault, and harassment, but according to the court, he pled guilty to the charges, which were all dropped. However, that wasn't all. Eventually, Nichols went to Newberry College on a football scholarship, but his time there was once again cut short. He dropped out of school in '95 and traveled to Georgia for work, and nothing was heard about him again. September 2004, he was arrested for raping his ex-girlfriend. It all started 8 years after they had broken up. He had found she was dating Chris Rowell, a minister from their church, and he was driven by jealousy. He forced his way into her house, bound her with duct tape at gunpoint, and had his way with her. He was charged with rape, aggravated sodomy, and burglary. And according to multiple accounts, he had told people in the courthouse, "I'm not going to go lying down." Some of his friends warned the DA's office that he might try to escape. One friend told prosecutors that Nichols was planning an escape and asked him to leave a credit card in the pocket of a suit jacket he would wear to court. This wasn't everything. The sheriff's office was also alerted about the threat Nichols posed. 2 days before he was called to give his testimony, while he was being escorted from the courthouse to his jailhouse, weapons fashioned out of metals that possibly came from a door hinge were found in his shoes. So the authorities had adequate time and pre-knowledge about his evil plans. The retrial began and the tension heightened, with every witness called to take the stand. Nichols would have to face life in prison if convicted, and he knew it. The sheriff's deputy was assigned to guard Nichols during his 2 trials under Judge Barnes. On the last day of the hearing, she escorted Nichols as usual to the holding area, where she was to remove his handcuffs so that he could change into civilian clothes. When one cuff was released, Nichols, with all his weight, pushed the deputy into another open cell. He grabbed her gun belt, which included keys to the safe where the Beretta 40 cal semi-automatic pistol was stored. Now armed with the pistol, he started his search for Judge Rowland. He found him in courtroom 8F, from a door behind the judge's bench where he was presiding over motions in a civil trial. He shot him in the back of the head, killing him instantly, and then began the hunt for his ex-girlfriend. Luckily for her, she was nowhere to be found. According to reports, she came late on that day. Eventually, he was recaptured, and on the 7th of November 2008, he was given multiple life sentences. Slobodan Praljak. November 29th, 2017. 72-year-old Slobodan yells in court, "I reject your verdict. I'm not a war criminal," before he drinks poison and dies. Born in Yugoslavia in 1945, his life looked pretty conventional right from when he was a growing child. There was never anything special about him until the Croatian War of Independence in 1991. His life then would take a dramatic turn. Praljak joined the army, rising to the rank of general, playing a vital role during the conflict. However, his leadership reportedly involved war crimes, such as numerous attacks on religious houses, looting, and assaults on people. He was also the mastermind behind the drill camp, where Bosniak men were subjected to untold levels of brutality and harassment. After the war, Praljak resigned as a general, returning to civilian life, where he would start a production company, a tobacco company, and even wrote 25 books appearing to get his life back on track. Retirement began to feel wonderful, but not for long. In the early 2000s, Praljak and 5 others faced war crimes, sponsored by the International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. He surrendered to the authorities and was indicted on some grave accusations, such as Geneva Convention breaches, violations of war laws and customs, and crimes against humanity. Most of the allegations were a result of his high-ranking position throughout the war. When evidence of atrocities were brought forward, the ICT for former Yugoslavia said that Praljak was either aware of the crimes and did nothing to intervene, or ordered them. April 2006, his trial began, and it took about 7 years for the jury to come to a decision. Praljak was found guilty of all charges against him and was sentenced to 20 years behind bars. He contested that ruling in November 2017, but the jury still wasn't convinced. They maintained sections of his sentence while others were dismissed. After hearing the judge's verdict, Praljak's demeanor changed. It was obvious he wasn't still satisfied with the ruling of the court, and his response shocked everybody.
Stop, please. Please sit down.
And the entire court was thrown into pandemonium. Judge Carmela Gaius immediately suspended the proceedings and drew the curtains. An ambulance was called, but Praljak died of heart failure before getting to the hospital. Now, his demise raised many questions in the heart of people, of which the most common was about how he received the poison. The security checks in the courthouse are pretty thorough, which would prove insanely difficult to bring any illegal substance. An investigation started to answer that question, but despite the extensive examination of CCTV, the source of the toxin remains unknown. Praljak's demise brought about mixed reactions from different corners of the country. While some people felt sad about the passing of a war hero and a true citizen, others felt overjoyed about the death of a tyrant.